It is Monday night in East Lansing. Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around, grab a refreshment, enjoy yourself, behave yourself. We're going to talk Michigan State sports for the next hour plus. Not sure how far we'll go, how long we'll go, but always have a good time talking to Michigan State fans here at Spartan Mag Live with the Maggers and the non-Maggers, the people that are yet to become Spartan Mag subscribers. We want to encourage those people to join the fun over at SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber, SpartanMag.com. About $8 a month, something like that. Join all your Michigan State friends and a few frenemies over there to talk Michigan State sports all the time, every day. We do that here live once a week. SpartanMag.com, your source for analysis on Michigan State sports. Also, breaking news, breaking scoops, recruiting scoops all the time, every day. SpartanMag.com. Been doing it since the beginning of the internet. We've been doing this for about a year. Had a lot of good feedback. Appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. What we do is we take questions over here, mailbag style. Questions have been posted over the SpartanMag.com Underground Bunker message board. I'll take those questions here. Also, we will take questions in the reply area, which is either over there or there if you're on a laptop. If you're watching on a mobile device, I don't know where it is. If you're not watching live, can't help you this week, but join live next week and put your question in the chat area, and we'll get to it. No sports necessarily, but still a lot to recover. Still a lot to cover. Still a lot to talk about. Still a lot to discuss. As we try to recover from the news 2 weeks ago that Big Ten football is out for the fall of 2020, and that's been a tough pill to swallow for a lot of us. And I posted something at the Underground Bunker back when it happened, like the day after or 2 days afterward, and I said that I was kind of having buyer's remorse a little bit, buyer's remorse, because when the news came out, I accepted it. Like, that's probably a good idea. Big Ten being smart, being proactive. We remember what the president at Oregon State University said when he was asked what the difference is between the Big Ten and the SEC, and in terms of the decisions they've made, and he said probably reality. That was pretty sharp back then. The president at Oregon State used to be president at LSU, so he knows the culture in the Southeast. But as of now, 2 weeks later, not hearing a lot of negativity from schools that are having their fall camps, pads on, scrimmages taking place, counting down a week and a half. I think South Florida is playing Southern Mississippi or something like that in a week and a half. So those of us that follow Big Ten football, that follow Michigan State football, are on the sidelines now, and we will remain on the sidelines September, October, November. Will that become more difficult to handle in the weeks and days and months ahead? I'm not sure, but my personal case of buyer's remorse continues to be remorseful. Now, I'm a little bit of a knee-jerk reactionary on those type of things, and you take my dessert away, I'm going to cry about it. So I'm definitely not the most qualified person to speak on it. That would be the doctors. But like we said back then, and the experts on immunology and those things. But the SEC and the ACC, they had some experts that they were relying upon also and came to their conclusions their way. I don't know the answers. I just know that 3 conferences are playing, and right now 2 are not in terms of the major conferences. And the year 2020 has been strange. And it's becoming all the more strange all the time. A lot of recruiting news going on. Michigan State with a big commitment from Gino Vandermark, offensive lineman from New Jersey, ranked the number 1 offensive prospect recruit in the state of New Jersey by Rivals.com. Michigan State trying to reel in the number 2 offensive player in the state of New Jersey. Audric Estime, running back, good-looking running back. He's got some power, got some quickness, got some agility. A real interesting prospect there at the running back position. From a micro standpoint, Michigan State getting an excellent offensive tackle prospect from New Jersey. 6'5", big legs, big trunk. Looks to me when I look at him, when I saw him move, he reminds me of a Wisconsin type of offensive lineman. Moves well, gets into his people, physical, finds his landmarks. Good feet. Showed really good feet in pass protection on a couple of his clips, junior clips. And I looked at him, I'm like, I want to see if Wisconsin offered this kid. And I looked it up, and I was surprised Wisconsin did not offer him or had not offered him. I thought he looked like somewhere between a Wisconsin offensive tackle and someone like Dan France. You might remember Dan France played left tackle for Michigan State for some of those excellent Mark D'Antonio teams. He was a guy with big thighs, big calves, moved pretty well, was a good, solid left tackle for a lot of good teams. So somewhere between a Dan France type of offensive tackle and what you see at Wisconsin quite frequently. That's the body type. And his grandfather played at Michigan State, so there's a bit of a legacy aspect there. We're still looking into that angle of things. Looking forward to doing more about Vandermark. So it's an interesting one. Estime, good running back, 4-star in the Rivals.com ranking system. That's the micro. Good running back prospect, good offensive tackle prospect. The macro is that Michigan State's getting busy in New Jersey. And it's looking like it's long overdue. Michigan State recruited a little bit in New Jersey over the years with Mark D'Antonio. I think Pat Narduzzi recruited out there a little bit. But the way Michigan State is doing it now is with Audric Estime. And, Michigan State's doing a solid job with him. There's interest with Estime with him looking at possibly Nebraska, Kentucky, a couple other schools, but Michigan State's running real strongly with Estime. Will Piegler, Michigan State's running backs coach, is the primary recruiter in New Jersey for that running back, Audric Estime. Kapilovic, the offensive line coach for Michigan State, was the primary recruit for Vandermark, the offensive lineman. That's the way Mel Tucker's been doing it. That's the way he's going to be doing it going forward. He has the position coaches recruiting their position all across the country rather than dividing it into regional recruiting precincts. He's doing it by position. And I think that has really helped with those two recruitments and other recruitments, including Hampton, Fay, and some other ones outside of the radius in the Great Lakes area. Makes a lot of sense to do it that way. If you're a running back in New Jersey, does it make more sense that you're getting recruited by the running backs coach or the defensive backs coach, and then he tries to put you in contact with the running backs coach on occasion? As many of you know, the way it's been in past years for a lot of programs is that there'll be a part of the country and a part of the state and a part of the Midwest that each coach has as his recruiting territory. So, Mike Tressel used to recruit a part of Ohio when he was defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. He recruited Le'Veon Bell, a running back, because that was in his area. That's the way it's been for years, right? That was also the most economic way to do things. You'll have to spend a little more money to do it by position, but I think time will show that that's the most effective way to do it. You have to spend more money because, for instance, Michigan State has 3 coaches going to New Jersey right now on a regular basis. Well, not right now because they're not able to travel, but when they do, that's the way they'll be doing it. And, in this day of age when everything is through Zoom, there's less of that around the country in terms of region, I would think. I would think that most programs are doing it by position. I don't know, but Michigan State is right now, and they're doing it well. But if they were able to travel right now, for instance, and if they could have done it in May and in January, February, you would have had Will Piegler going to New Jersey to check in on Estime. You would have had Kapilovic going to New Jersey to check in on Vandermark. And Jay Johnson, actually Ross Ells, the linebackers coach, would be going to New Jersey to check in on linebacker Mekhi Bayer, who's a big-time linebacker that Michigan State is looking good for right now. Actually, Kentucky and Nebraska are the 2 schools that are battling Michigan State for Bayer. Here's my point. If Michigan State were traveling right now, all 3 coaches would be going to New Jersey. Of course, if one coach is in New Jersey, he will double up and hit the other 2. So maybe you end up not spending a whole lot more money, but it seems to me that it would require more recruiting budget to do it this way, but I think it's also going to prove more effective. Doing it via Zoom right now, Michigan State getting some things done in New Jersey. We talked about that a little bit last week. That's a big thing for Michigan State recruiting right now. Michigan State does what they can Michigan State does what it can in the state of Michigan, in the state of Ohio, in the Big Ten region. Try to get into Florida, Georgia when they can. They've gotten into Nebraska. I've gotten into New Jersey a little bit over the years, not a ton. But Michigan State is playing Rutgers every single year in the Big Ten East. Michigan State, I don't know if I want to say they're a household name in New Jersey, but they're on the map. I mean, it's not Penn State, but it's not far behind. And there's a lot of good players in New Jersey. There's not a ton of players in the Midwest compared to other parts of the country, but there are some in New Jersey. And if you're playing in New Jersey every other year, and Rutgers is coming to your place every other year, and you're playing Penn State as well, because there are a lot of football fans in New Jersey that follow Penn State. Michigan State is going to be on the tip of their tongue. Michigan State should be able to recruit in New Jersey. Haven't been doing it in recent years. They're doing it this year. 1 down, 2 more to go. Going after Estime, the running back. Going after Bayer, the linebacker. And the linebacker, I think, is excellent. I think he's excellent. We could talk more about him a little bit later. Anyway, come on in. Grab yourself a beverage. Let us know what you're enjoying today. And let us know how you're doing. Always good to see the Maggers out here. We're going to go to question number 1 right away from Callie Spartan. And my voice is a little bit bad today, so we might have to cut it off. I've warned of that in the past. Could happen today. Callie Spartan, he said he was breaded in Inkster and buttered in Detroit. We love that. He says, with how the coaches in basketball, college basketball, are uniting, what is your confidence that we will start on time? Talking about college basketball. Starting on time, that might be difficult. You hear a lot of athletic directors and coaches talking about at least January 1st. That's the date I'm hearing, and it seems like that might be what they're geared toward. So on time, confidence meter, I'd say less than 20%. Something after January 1st, I'd say over 75%. Izzo says 100%. I heard Danton Cole talking about hockey, and they're thinking January 1st. That January 1st seems like a magic date for a lot of people. First of all, it's a new year. That's when conference seasons start nationally a lot in a lot of conferences. The Big Ten, of course, starts a little bit earlier than that normally. But January 1st would also come after a 2-week holiday period where things are going to be bubblicious in a lot of ways in a lot of campuses across the United States, including Michigan State now with the students being told to stay home. Some of them are on campus. They're in East Lansing, but they're in apartments and off-campus living, but nobody on campus, no classes, everything is virtual. So it's a bubble situation for the athletes right now. I think it should be relatively, I don't want to say easy, but manageable for not only the football program to keep positive tests at a minimum, if not zero, but also the basketball team to keep things at zero, which is important for their health and also important for the health of people like Mike Garland, Dwayne Stevens, Tom Izzo, right? I think they've got a really good chance to bubble-fy Michigan State basketball and bubble-fy programs all over the Big Ten and the country and start at least on January 1st. That's my observation, not an expert opinion. Confidence meter on time, what did I say, 20%? January 1st, something north of 70, 75, 80%. And that'll change every day. I mean, we've changed confidence meters on a lot of things relating to this in sports, going back to April every week. I mean, it looked good for college football in the middle of June, didn't it? Then it all went off a cliff. And then right when the Big Ten wanted to make their decision, the studies about the heart situations came out, and Kevin Warren and the presidents really hit the brakes on that one. And there's a lot of internal squabbling in the conference as to whether that decision was too early. Tom Izzo thinks it was too early. A lot of athletic directors off the record feel that was too early. The presidents didn't need input from ADs or coaches. They acted on their own, made the decision. I respect university presidents in a lot of ways on a lot of things. It remains to be seen whether that was the way to go with this one. I mean, you can make a decision for safety reasons, and that's respectable. But, gosh, that was a real abrupt decision. As everybody knows, just a few days after the schedules were announced. What would they have lost by kicking the can down the road and delaying things, and maybe choosing to start the Big Ten season in late September like the SEC is? They wouldn't have lost much. I think they wanted to make that decision before they got on the field in pads. They could have done that. They could have told, because it was all, the Big Ten teams were only playing amongst themselves. It was only a Big Ten conference season. They could have easily said, hey, everyone off the practice field, we're going to look at it for another 2 weeks. And I think everybody would have been fine with that. Instead, they postponed it and said, we're playing in the spring. And at that time, it was all kind of shocking. A lot of us, including myself included, just kind of looked at each other and said, I guess that's the right thing to do. I don't know. A lot of people in the media thought it was the right thing to do. I don't know if that represents society as a whole. I'm sure that it does not. Anyway, it feels like there's more of a can-do attitude surrounding basketball as opposed to football. I mean, in the SEC and the ACC, there's a can-do attitude. But here in the Big Ten region, it seems like there's more of a can-do attitude, but you never know what the presidents are thinking. And I know Tom Izzo was disappointed that the presidents didn't seek input from someone like himself and other coaches. He said that on a talk show in Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and he wasn't talking about just himself. He was talking about major decisions by colleges involving athletics. He was talking on a talk show in Detroit saying that in the past, it would have been unthinkable for the University of Michigan to not consult a Don Canham or a Bo Schembechler or someone like that. He didn't come out and say, why didn't they talk to me about it? But I kind of think that's what he was thinking. Whether or not you think that would have been prudent for university presidents to take input from coaches and ADs, or in the old days, faculty reps, those guys used to have power, not so much anymore. That's up to you. My opinion on that is still forming. Question number 2. This is from Mile High is his name at the Underground Bunker message board. He's from Golden, Colorado. He says, hope family and friends are safe and healthy. They are. Thank you for asking. Hope yours are as well. He says, thanks for all you do for us Spartan fans. Well, thank you for what you do for SpartanMag.com. Thank you, Mile High. He says, do you have a feel for whether Coach Mel Tucker and staff are recruiting for a 3-4 or a 4-3 defense? I think we talked about this a little bit last week. You know, Scotty Hazelton, the new defensive coordinator, has run a 4-3, prefers a 4-3. Mel Tucker has been both a 4-3 and a 3-4, and he was asked about that in the spring. I might have even asked him that question. And Tucker's done both. At Alabama, they did both. Georgia, they did a little bit of both also. To have the flexibility to do both is outstanding, but it requires having a tremendous nose guard to play a 3-4, to be able to command a double team pretty much to make the starting point work. And it takes a really big human being to do that in a 3-4, and big human beings to play defensive end in a 5 technique to also to 2-gap and command extra blockers. Big human beings. Are those big human beings also going to be quick enough to play a 4-3 for you? For most programs, no. You have to do one or the other. Alabama and Georgia had the type of human beings capable of being big enough to 2-gap in a 3-4 and also quick enough to play a 4-3, 1-gapping, and it's a different style of play. It's hard to that's why you're saying, is Michigan State recruiting for one or the other? I think they're recruiting for a 4-3. That's what this program has been geared toward in the past, and that's what Hazelton's done. And Tucker is not married to either concept. If the program is full of 4-3 type of guys, he can work with that and turn Hazelton loose on that. So it looks to me like 4-3, although I look at someone like the kid from Detroit. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later on also. He is quick and big and strong at 340 pounds. Help me out here. What's the guy's name? Harmon. Yeah, Harmon. Not Watson, but Harmon. Harmon, I think, could do both. I think that he's strong enough to be a 1-gap, or to be a middle guard, nose guard, and 2-gap on the inside. And I think he's quick enough to be a nose tackle or a 3-tech in a 4-3. Normally you wouldn't have a guy that big as a 3-tech, but he moves well, man. At least he did in April. I've not seen him since the lockdown and everything. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Question number 3. Oh, actually, Mile High from Golden, Colorado also asks, how is the new staff's relationship with Michigan high school coaches? And are there high school programs the new staff is gaining traction with that are new for Michigan State? You know, every once in a while I look at your messages here just to make sure the microphone has not gone haywire. You know, high school coaches in the state of Michigan recruiting is interesting because it's a combination. There's like 4, 5, 6, 7 schools that produce a lot of the high-end major conference talent. And then the rest of the high-end major conference talent comes from a smattering. Brad Hoos! I'm just going to stop right there and ring the bell. chipping in at $19.99 for personal sponsorship today. Appreciate that in the tip jar for sure. And Brad, it looks like you might have had a question. I better go in there and check it out and see what it is. I'm not in the YouTube channel right now. I got to go find my page, my channel here. Got to click on it here. I think I've got it turned down. Let's see, Brad, who says, in terms of flipping a recruit between now and signing day, what school, position group, or player is most likely? See how that works? That type of tip jar. I come right to you, serve you a drink, and answer your question. In terms of flipping a recruit between now and signing day, what school, position group, or player is most likely? Well, they don't have any linebacker commitments right now. And there's one committed at Penn State that Michigan State liked, Kobe King. Not sure how likely that would be. I know Michigan State was going to keep working on him. And I wouldn't doubt something happening at on the offensive line a little bit. And there's a little insider trader information that I got to stay away from a little bit on that. But great question. And in terms of flipping people, you know, they lost Budden. They're going to keep working on him, but with no season this fall, it might be harder to flip people because you would hope to have a good season in the fall, then you can flip people or at least establish your brand a little bit more. This year, I'm not sure Michigan State would have had a good season that would have helped in the flip process. But what I said earlier, keep an eye on that position a little bit. No guesses, please. I just know that they need some people there. They still need, they're still looking at DBs. They're trying to flip the kid that was committed to Rutgers. You guys know about Stephen Johnson. It's a great question. I wish I had more information for you. If you're a subscriber, Brad at SpartanMag.com, message me over at the Underground Bunker, and we'll talk a little bit offline about that. All right. Let's get back to what I was talking about with high school recruiting. The question had to do with high school football programs. So, there's 4 or 5 heavyweight programs in the state of Michigan that produce a lot of talent here in recent years. And in the state of Michigan, it's kind of cyclical. You'll have one school that produces a lot of players for a few years. The coach leaves, and that school doesn't produce anymore. The coach goes to another school, and they start producing there. Currently, you look at schools like Belleville, Oak Park, Detroit King, Detroit Cass Tech. If you look at the current Rivals.com in-state rankings, you look at the top 17 players in the state, the top 17, 9 of the 17 are from 4 schools. Those 4 schools, Belleville, Oak Park, Detroit King, Detroit Cass Tech. 9 of the top 17. 14 of the top 35 are from those 4 schools. If you want to recruit well in the state of Michigan, you got to do well in Belleville. You have to have good dialogue going in Belleville, Oak Park, Detroit King, Detroit Cass Tech, those 4. And then right behind them, West Bloomfield producing a lot of talent these days. Southfield A&T, 3 last year in the top 30, I think, 2 this year. And, Southfield A&T last year, they beat West Bloomfield twice. They beat Clarkston. Other schools that traditionally have a lot of players, Grand Rapids Catholic Central. Recently, Walled Lake Western a little bit, or is it Walled Lake Central? One of those Walled Lake schools a little bit. Muskegon High School, a lot of talent. With Muskegon, unfortunately, you run into, qualifying issues academically there, but good talent, great players there. So you got to be strong in the top 4 schools, and then some of those that are coming after those. But you might remember in years past, remember when Detroit Southeastern all of a sudden had a lot of players out of nowhere, and then they went away? That's what I'm talking about, the cyclical nature. The Detroit Catholic League has fallen off a little bit in a lot of ways. Brother Rice last year was 7-4. Haven't seen a lot of great talent individually from them in a while. Detroit Catholic Central, same type of thing. Detroit Jesuit produced Elijah Collins a couple years ago. He's done an excellent job at Michigan State, and they also sent a safety to where? Northwestern. And, this year, Dorian Mousy. A back 7 players going to Duke. Michigan State really liked him. So Detroit Jesuit a little bit, but not much of the Catholic League. Remember, Orchard Lake St. Mary's used to be great, and last year they were 10-4, and I think they played for the state title game. And they sent one player to Boston College last year in the top 30, but you're not seeing a lot of Orchard Lake St. Mary's players. Warren De La Salle's had some good teams. They sent offensive lineman Grant Toutant to Ohio State. I think he committed to Penn State, decommitted, signed with Ohio State. One player from De La Salle. In past years, Farmington Hills Harrison was a force. Detroit Country Day still has players here and there. You'll see East Kentwood with very good teams and occasionally players like Dallas Fincher going to Michigan State last year. But in the last 2 years, it's those 4 major heavyweight schools, then those 2 or 3 coming after that, and then some of the other ones that I mentioned. Aside from that, the state of Michigan, I think, is unique, more so than Ohio and probably Pennsylvania and Illinois in this way, that you'll have like individual scatter shot of schools and players. Like there'll be a player that comes out of, there's a Carlton Airport with Cody Keeler, one-time deal. Or like Tuan Jones was he from Marine City? Anchor Bay, right? Excellent player, Anchor Bay, and nothing before that, not much after that. Like this year, you look at the top 35, you got a couple Clarkston kids. You have Detroit Loyola, another Catholic League team, but they have one player, the big kid that I like. Warren Mott has one player each from like Sterling Heights, Stevenson, Wyoming Godwin Heights, Harper Woods, Macomb, Dakota, Davison. I know Davison won a state title, one player, quarterback's pretty good, whatever. East Lansing, 2 players, but East Lansing puts out players on a semi-regular basis. Maybe that I shouldn't put them in this category, but Portage Northern, River Rouge, Avondale, Chippewa Valley. That's what I mean. That's what I mean by scattershot. One player from a school and not much before or after. Last year you had a player from Port Huron Northern, excellent player, went to Michigan. Kid from Edwardsburg, offensive lineman, commits to Northwestern. Gibraltar Carlson. They've had a couple players over the last 10 years. Ian Stewart, Michigan State. Farmington had a kid. Saginaw Arthur Hill sent a kid to, can't remember where he went. Dearborn High had the tight end Tommy Guajardo go to Michigan State, Dearborn High. Harper Woods sent a corner to Indiana. Flint Beecher, a wide receiver to Kentucky. Pontiac Notre Dame, an offensive tackle to Purdue. Dearborn High, another one, a defensive tackle, went to Minnesota. So Dearborn High had 2 last year. And there's more players coming out of Dearborn these days. Berrien Springs, offensive guard to Kansas. So Dearborn High maybe move them up a little bit more. But that's what I'm talking about, scattershot. All those schools that are kind of one and dones. Nothing against those schools, nothing against those kids. But that's the way the state of Michigan is. You'll have your heavyweight programs in the Detroit area, a couple in the Grand Rapids area. Everything else is scattershot. Not that that's a bad thing. But in terms of getting to know coaches with all the scattershot going on, you just try to know as many as you can. You have your camps and your clinics. You get to know them there. You try to promote goodwill within the state with those people and kids and coaches in Ohio too. D'Antonio was very good at that. These coaches have not had a chance to get on the road and do those things yet. But for starters, to set the cornerstone on these things, Belleville, Oak Park, Detroit, King, Detroit, Cass Tech right now. When you look at Belleville, head coach Jermaine Crowell, a guy with a lot of affinity for the University of Michigan, but has had some disputes in the press a little bit with Jim Harbaugh in recent months. There was an article about it in a Detroit newspaper a couple of weeks ago. I suspect that article will help things get smoothed out, I would think. I would think Harbaugh would want to smooth it out, but they've been in a little bit of a standoff there. And in the meantime, other schools have come in and gotten some of these players, like Damon Payne commits to Alabama, number 1 player in the state, excellent defensive tackle prospect from Belleville. Jamari Budden goes to Penn State over Michigan State. Michigan State was in there with Budden. They're in there with some other ones. Michigan State tried to get a foot in the door with Damon Payne. They were well received. So, Michigan State has a few players from Belleville right now. So although Crowell has had an affinity for Michigan Wolverines in past years, not necessarily anything against Michigan State in recent years. He's had a lot of talented players, and it's been kind of equal opportunity over there right now. And I think Mel Tucker is going to continue to try to get things going in Belleville a little bit, which could help the program. So you're asking me if I've seen this, not person to person, but from what the things that Jamari Budden and Damon Payne as recruits were saying when Michigan State started coming after them, they were impressed. And with Tucker and his coaches and what they're doing, you can only do so much via Zoom, but you can tell Michigan State is making Belleville a priority as well as Oak Park. Michigan State's trying to get in on Rayshon Benny. Looks like that one might be getting away a little bit, but by the same token, Michigan State getting in there, getting a commitment from Oak Park running back Davion Prim, getting those channels of communication and respect open. May not have gotten the big dogs for those programs this year, but it sets the table in the future. Michigan State's working at it. Greg Carter is the coach at Oak Park. He's been an excellent coach at a lot of programs around the state in recent years. He was at Detroit DePorres for a long time. Remember when Detroit DePorres was a part of the Catholic League? They won state titles. When he was at Oak Park as a assistant coach and a head coach, Detroit St. Martin DePorres won 12 state championships while he was there. School was closed down by the local archdiocese, but DePorres was excellent. And then he went to Inkster, had a couple players, including Devin Gardner, who went to Michigan, and then he became head coach at Oak Park. So everywhere he's gone, he's attracted players. When he was at DePorres and Inkster, there were no players going to Oak Park. Well, I guess Edwin Baker was around there. It's been since 2011. I'm not sure when he got there, but Oak Park now, a lot of good talent, and it's going to be that way as long as Carter's there. Detroit King, Michigan State did really well there for a long time. Well documented that they ran into some major obstacles with all the drama that happened with Curtis Blackwell. So it was going to be hard to recruit there. Jalen Reed, the defensive back, goes to Penn State this year. Michigan State tried to get in on him. But while D'Antonio was here, they weren't going to get anyone from Detroit King. Could they start to change that a little bit? It's possible. That one is worth watching. Haven't heard anything on the inside yet about that one. Detroit Cass Tech, Michigan State's gotten some players from there over the years. But Michigan has been able to do real well there. Thomas Wilcher and Harbaugh have been close over the years. Okay, yeah, Edwin Baker was Oak Park. I just don't know if Greg Carter was there or not. Thanks for posting that, Chris. Wilcher, Cass Tech's going to be strong for Michigan. But Michigan State can get in there and battle for some of those guys. But for the most part, they got Jordan Reed. I think Michigan tried to get in late with Reed. I'm not sure. But Michigan State's gotten some players from Cass Tech here and there. It's not been a great pipeline of commitments to Michigan State. But Cass Tech, for as many players have been recruited there, they've also had a lot of busts. But if you have a lot of players recruited, you're going to get busts just because of the number of players and the probability there. But you have to get in good with King and Cass Tech. This year with Cass Tech, Kobe King going to Penn State, and Raheem Anderson, an interesting center, going to Michigan. So those four, you look at West Bloomfield with Ronald Bellamy. He played at Michigan. Excellent wide receiver. They're producing Donovan Edwards as a running back this year. Probably going to go to Michigan, I would think. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Michigan State tried to get in on him. Not going to get him. Edwards is a good player. We've talked about him a month and a half ago. When you look at him as being whatever he's ranked, number 2 or 3 running back in the country, and you compare him, I did a comparison to past recent players that were ranked number 2, 3 running back in the country. Guys like Sony Michel, and I think I had some others. His junior film is not as good as Sony Michel, J.K. Dobbins, those type of players. Ranked pretty high. I've not looked at every running back in the country. I'm just talking about past running backs that have been ranked in that category. He's pretty good at West Bloomfield. So, Dylan Tatum for next year out of West Bloomfield. So West Bloomfield is another one of those. In Southfield A&T with Timothy Conley. Last year they had 3 players in the top 35 or so and 2 this year. So, Muskegon, Mike Tressel has recruited Muskegon in the past. I don't know what they'll do with that if they had good players last year with Cam Martinez and Billy Roberts, and they've got a pretty good front 7 player coming next year in the class of 2022. But I would imagine Tressel, being a safeties coach, while he's at Michigan State, would continue to recruit safeties. He has some ins there. Maybe they will let him go there and do some more there if they think that would be advantageous. So, the cyclical nature of it, are we going to see some other schools pop up? That'll happen. I'm not hearing, because the coaches haven't had a chance to really get out and press flesh like they would like to. Next year, in terms of scatter shot, the number one player in the state right now, Will Johnson, a corner from Grosse Pointe South. Grosse Pointe South. Number two player is Alex Van Sumeren from Essexville Garber. Defensive tackle, quick, strong, motor. I've seen him at camps. His brother played at Michigan. He's committed to Michigan. Good player, Essexville Garber. Smaller school, scatter shot. Number four player in the state, Josh Burnham from Traverse City Central. I realize Traverse City Central is a huge school, but in terms of producing individuals ranked this high, again, still a little bit scatter shot. Number five player in the state for 2022. Next year, 2022. Tayshawn Trent, wide receiver from East Point. East Point High School, scatter shot again. Anyway, but then you'll have the other usual suspects like I was talking about. They'll be jumping up and do it as well. So it's hard to do. It's hard to focus in on. And in the state of Ohio, it seems like there's like 15 or 20 programs that regularly produce talent. In the state of Michigan, it's like 4 to 8 to 9, it seems like, and then scatter shot. All right, let's go over here and check the chat area, see what kind of questions you guys have for us. Old Tuck checks in first, the bell cow of the operation. First one to arrive, last one to leave. That's the kind of commitment we get out of Old Tuck, and we appreciate it. Brad Fashenko says he's here and he's ready to go. Brad, you got a typo there. Check it out. Old Tuck says the big toe should be here soon. There he is. Rob South. He is the big toe. He says, what's up, fellas? Gordon Tenona, Gordy Howe. Gordy is in the house. I was watching the Canucks last night. They didn't show all that speed that people thought against Vegas. We'll see what happens with Islanders and Flyers tonight. He says Gordy's in the house, and I got it twisted. Ed Francis, Big Jim. Yeah, it's me. Bradley Cruz. Hey, guys. Old Tuck says from Austin via Ludington. He's a Lake Michigan guy. I had my Lake Huron shirt on last week. I gave Lake Michigan a real good look this summer. And they were verging on getting in a number one spot in the Great Lakes Power Rankings. But the big reveal, Lake Huron, still number one, because a couple days ago I was at Mackinac Island, and I stood out there looking over the Great Divide, saw a young hawk flying, and my soul began to rise. And I'm telling you what, Lake Huron stays number one for now in my Great Lakes Power Rankings. Todd H. says, Cody White did well in practice today with the Denver Broncos. He was in more picks than any other wide receiver today. Thanks for the information on that. We were talking about him on the message board yesterday. Big Mooby had posted that Cody White had signed with the Broncos, and I said it'll be interesting to see what happens with him with the Broncos. On one hand, he was not attractive enough to get drafted. However, he was signed by the Chiefs and released for a medical ailment that was never released. And then he was signed by somebody else, maybe the Giants, and then waived, and then signed by the Broncos. In practice today, apparently he did pretty well. Good for him. And I was very good for him for now. I was critical of him, criticized him for his decision. Did not make sense to me. I was not surprised at all that he went undrafted. He has talent at Michigan State. As a player, a little bit flaky. Sometimes didn't seem to run the right route. Sometimes blocked with the wrong leverage. As I've said before, didn't seem to be the most self-aware player out there. Hence, he went pro. Well, now there's no football season this fall. So now that decision doesn't look so bad now, does it? Unless he would have stayed around in the spring or whatever. But probably does not regret it. Doing well in practice today. Can he hang on with the Broncos? I have my doubts, unless not getting drafted and then getting waived twice has done a huge thing for his motivation and lighting his fuse and making himself more self-aware. Maybe that'll make him do a better job of reaching his potential, because I'm not sure he quite hit his potential at Michigan State. And not through the fault of the coaches, I don't think. So, good for him. Wish him well. I wish there were preseason NFL football games so we could watch him. I know that the Broncos had 2 injuries at the wide receiver position, including the little slot receiver from Penn State, the kid from Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Can't think of his name right now. He transferred to IMG. You know who I'm talking about. Hamler. So, Hamler, they drafted in the second round. He's injured. Another guy's injured. So you need wide receivers to have practice. you know how the NFL goes. They only have so many guys on their roster running around and a few guys in the taxi squad. They need players. The guy they picked was Cody White. So there have been a couple of teams, the Giants, I think it was, and the Broncos, that when they went looking for a wide receiver on the scrap heap, he apparently was the top of the scrap heap. So he'll get another shot at it. Let's go back to the mailbag. And thanks for the thumbs up we have so far. Give us some more if you have not already. I'm going to go ahead and send out a tweet also letting people know that this nonsense is going on. Appreciate your patience with me while I do this. Apologize for the dead air. Reminder, become a SpartanMag.com subscriber, and I will give you an attaboy. I don't have any other premiums to give you to try to get people to subscribe, but we certainly appreciate every subscriber that we have. Question number 3 from Spartan Jat out of Rochester, Michigan says, hey, Comp, any insight on Antonio Gates Jr. as a player? What kind of a receiver is he supposed to be? Dearborn Fordson? What are they, the Tractors? Dearborn Fordson Tractors? I think I saw their helmet. They have a cool helmet. It's a tractor. They made tractors there, right? Dearborn. Right around the corner from the Ford World Headquarters, right? So Antonio Gates Jr., of course, the son of the Hall of Fame tight end, Antonio Gates, if he's not already a Hall of Famer, he soon will be. Antonio Gates from Detroit Central, won a state championship as a basketball player, came to Michigan State as a two-sport athlete. Saban wasn't having that. Antonio Gates didn't appreciate it, transferred to Kent State. Actually transferred somewhere else, junior college for a little bit. Then to Kent State with Stan Heath. Went to the Elite Eight at Kent State. Was an excellent basketball player for the Michigan Mustangs under Norm Oden. They put Gates as a power point guard at times. And nowadays in the NBA, you see other teams doing that. Like, Luka Doncic, when he put like that 6'7" body, put the ball in his hands and let him do some things. I'm not saying Antonio Gates is that. But going back 15 years, you would never put a guy his size, power forward at the high school basketball level at point guard. But he handled the ball well enough, the Mustangs did it. And they went to the Adidas Big Time Final Four, which was the national 64-team tournament. Anyway, his son, Antonio Gates Jr., Dearborn Fordson, playing for the Tractors. Gates Jr., ranked number 13 player in the state. Rivals.com lists him at 6'1", 175. On his huddle highlights, he's listed at 6'3". He looks like he's at least 6'2" to me. Long stride guy. Fluid with the long stride. I'm looking at sophomore film. Sometimes tall sophomores are not the most fluid people. This guy's fluid. And you look at some of the route running. On his comebacks, maybe he uses an extra footstep. You'd like him to be more economical with those footsteps. But his double moves, he's really got that one down. Long stride, like, fake the flag, go to the post. Very fluid with that. With the double move to the post, very fluid with that. And I think that's just the beginning of what he can be as a route runner. He's advanced with that particular double move. The long stride is nice. I don't know what he runs. Looks like he runs okay. And he's 10th grade film. He's just going to run better and better. His footwork on his release moves looks good. He's not smooth yet at tracking the ball with his feet and all that stuff. That can come later, I would imagine. His balance is not yet great. He's 10th grade film. Understandable. Chris Trainum, ringing a bell. Chris, big sponsorship. 10 in the tip jar. Appreciate that. So let's go right to his question. See what he's got. Chris is a regular here. We appreciate him coming in, supporting the enterprise here and the fun on a Monday night in East Lansing. Chris Trainham says, thanks for all you do, Comp and staff. I have a question in the bag about Joe Crawford. Yes, you do. And I'll get to that right after I get through with Gates. So I guess I went through what kind of player he is right now. He's a tall receiver. He's going to be 6'3" at some point. Long strider. Does that make him more of an X, more of a field side wide out, less of an inside receiver? At Michigan State in past years, they wanted the receivers to be able to do all three. Some programs will have you just do one type or the other. I've not found out the way these coaches do it. But Michigan State's in on him. He's going to be visiting, tomorrow, I think. Justin Thinn did a great job with breaking that news over at SpartanMag.com about the visitors this week. Not only Antonio Gates Jr., but also Kamari Landers. Justin Thinn is posted here. If I pronounce that incorrectly, Justin, let us know. Kamari Landers, offensive guard from Detroit Fordson, 2022 class of 2022, number 16 player in the country. I texted Justin Thinn to ask him the pronunciation of Kamari Landers, and he answered it, and I read it, but I didn't commit it to memory because I'm getting that old. I should have written it down phonetically. I would have that. So, Justin, let me know if I got that wrong. Justin Thinn doing a great job. SpartanMag.com has been a great addition to our roster at SpartanMag.com. Corey Robinson, thanks a lot, Justin. Got it correctly. Thank you. Thank you, Justin, for doing a great job. All the Maggers out there, give Justin Thinn a round of applause for all the great stuff he does for the Maggers and the community here. So go ahead and in the chat area, give Justin a thumbs up. And if you're a subscriber to SpartanMag.com, you know the work that Justin Thinn is doing, and you know the work that Corey Robinson is doing. Corey Robinson is the recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com, doing a great job all the time. And my buddy Paul Konerdijk, always doing a great job at large in a lot of ways. All those guys doing a great job, going all the way back to, Matt Dorsey and, Rico Beard really helped get us going in past years. He's a lot of fun. We hope to hook up with him more in the future now that he's driving the big rig in Detroit. Rico Cooney, like I said last week, I haven't talked to him in a while. Look forward to talking to him again, especially if we ever get Michigan State hockey going again. Sadly, this summer, Michigan State was unable to have their usual camp of players, pro players, prospects. They used to come to East Lansing and get in shape for the season. Well, the season is different this year, calendar-wise, and who knows? They might even be skating on mud on the down low. We don't know. I don't know. So if that's going on, I'm not letting the cat out of the bag. I don't know. But usually it's a good thing for Michigan State hockey to bring those guys back, and that needs to become even more of a recruiting tool going forward. Anyway, thanks to Chris for that, or thanks to the question about Gates there in terms of Chris Trainum and the Joe Crawford question. I've got that on here. Question number 8. This is from CJ Chris from South Philadelphia. He asked, what was the story on why Joe Crawford did not transfer from Kentucky to Michigan State? That was back in 2005. Joe Crawford was an excellent prospect out of Detroit Renaissance, committed to Kentucky, and midway through his sophomore year, his playing time plummeted, had 2 minutes in a game, and announced he was going to transfer. And a lot of people thought he was going to go to Michigan State. There was a lot of indications there was a lot of buzz and vibe that was going to happen. And Chris, I got to tell you, I forgot about all of that. I had to go back in the deep recesses of my memory, which is a scary thing, and think about it and think why it didn't happen. I don't think I ever asked Izzo about it point blank. Michigan State recruited him, did well with Malik Harrison, just good enough to finish second for both guys. But, there were some things back then. It was hard for Izzo to recruit in-state because there were a lot of haters in the state of Michigan back then that had a lot of influence. You don't want to play for Izzo. He won't let you get your boogie on. Remember that? Wouldn't let him get his boogie on. That was the Jackson kid out of Torrey Jackson. Where was he from? Saginaw Buena Vista, maybe? Anyway, Torrey Jackson kind of regretted that later. Went to Notre Dame, had a good career. And I heard he just had to step down from a coaching job this week for some reason. Anyway, he was a 17-year-old kid saying that, Torrey Jackson, and he regretted that later. He told Konendijk that he kind of regretted, not necessarily not going to Michigan State. He may have said that, but saying it in those terms, and he had a better appreciation for what Izzo does for players after he'd gone through college. Anyway, Joe Crawford, Izzo, they're getting blocked a little bit for some of those guys. Didn't get Crawford, and then he wants to leave Kentucky. Michigan State looked like they were right in there. In the meantime, Michigan State didn't recruit Joe's younger brother, Jordan Crawford, and Jordan still, he's still throwing that haterade around about that. Anyway, I never asked Izzo about it, but my guess is, educated guess here, the coach at Kentucky at the time when Crawford was thinking about transferring was Tubby Smith. And Izzo was really good friends with Tubby Smith. And Izzo's friends with a lot of people, has a lot of respect for a lot of people. And there's some toes that Izzo won't step on. Izzo does a lot of things the Heathcote way. Heathcote would not take a transfer from a friend. If a kid was going to transfer away from a program coached by a Heathcote friend, Heathcote wouldn't take the kid. Because coaches, it's a headache for coaches when transfers leave their school. And rightly or wrongly, sometimes there's a little bit of an animosity toward the school that receives that transfer. Not always. You're always worried a little bit about tampering. So if Michigan State would have taken Crawford, Tubby might have always wondered, did Izzo tamper there? And through back channels, did he tell Crawford, hey, we'll take you? On one hand, Izzo might have been worried about that. On the other hand, he wouldn't want to offend his friend Tubby Smith that way. Secondly, the Heathcote way of doing things, he wouldn't want to take a player from a program of a friend like Tubby Smith. Where did I hear that about Judd Heathcote? I heard that from Stan Joplin 25 years ago, probably, when Stan Joplin was an assistant coach here. There was a player, a center at Vanderbilt by the name of, was his name John Amici? Remember John Amici? At Vanderbilt, transferred to Penn State. He was transferring from Vanderbilt. Joplin told me that he went to Heathcote and said, hey, there's a big man at Vanderbilt. We can get him. Or there's a big man, John Amici. We should look at him. He's a good player. And Heathcote was like, where is he playing right now? And Joplin was like, Vanderbilt. And Heathcote said, can't do it. Eddie Fogler's a friend of mine. I can't do it. It's a bad Heathcote impression. Sorry about that. So I was going to do another Judd Heathcote impression, but it involved colorful language, and I'm not going to do it. But anyway, it had to do with Steve Polanowski drawing a charge. Actually, it wasn't colorful. I can say this one. It was Polanowski, and I don't know who the other player was. Might have been Garavaglia. Polanowski is driving with the basketball. Garavaglia tries to get a charge, and they both go flying. Block charge. They're both on the court. Heathcote blows the whistle and says, well, that was wimp versus wimp. Again, I didn't quite channel a good Heathcote voice there, but you can get a kick out of that one. Polanowski, I apologize. Garavaglia, I apologize if you watch this. I saw Garavaglia last year at one of those games down on the court. I hadn't seen him in a long time. It was nice to see him. I see Polanowski once in a while, too, at games. Anyway, but that's the name of that tune. Heathcote would not take Amici because he's friends with Fogler. I suspect that Izzo didn't want to deal with Crawford because he was friends with Tubby Smith. And if I remember right, I think Izzo may have spoken with Crawford and Crawford's people. And, gosh, I don't know this for sure. But I wouldn't doubt if Izzo kind of steered Crawford back to Kentucky. And he went back to Kentucky, played 2 more years, had a good career, and was drafted in the second round, bounced around. Anyway, the rest of the question from Chris is, does Crawford have a pro career if he played for Izzo, played under Izzo? Crawford 6'4", 6'5". Crawford was so good. I remember seeing him at the Nike camp when he was a 10th grader. And he was jumping. I think I talked about Kelvin Torbert here last week. He was jumping not quite like Torbert, but could really jump and, just had some strength about him. An in-between game, medium-range jump shot, nice-looking shot release. And you're like, man, that guy is a can't-miss college player. Then the next year we were back. Maybe 2 years after that, because he was on the national radar for a long time. By that time, I think he had already committed to Kentucky, or maybe he was on the verge of it. And I was watching him at one of those back gyms at IUPUI in Indianapolis at the Nike camp, and Izzo was there, and it was the part of the Nike camp that was 3-on-3. I missed the Nike camp. It was just really well organized. It was just really easy to get a better handle on a lot of players in a short period of time, more so maybe than now in some ways. Anyway, Joe Crawford was playing, and he was kind of playing okay, but went up and didn't seem to be jumping as high. And right as I was thinking it, Izzo was, sometimes you'll stand shoulder to shoulder with coaches. And Izzo's like, man, I swear some of these players get worse as they get older. Nothing against Crawford, but Crawford as a 10th grader could really jump, and you're like, man, this guy is going to be incredible. And then going into a senior year, could still jump well, and he was still good. But in some ways, some guys can jump like a flea when they're lighter. They put on a little bit of weight, they don't jump as well. Some guys jump better as 10th graders than they do as 12th graders. And I think Crawford was in that category. Jumped well in college, but wasn't. I mean, if you'd went to the Nike camp and talked to or looked at all the 10th graders, the best 10th graders in the nation at that time, Crawford would have had one of the best verticals there in the entire country. By the time they were all seniors, he definitely would not have been in the same percentile. Was still a good player, but I think it's a case of a guy that blossomed early. And he worked under Tubby Smith. Would he have been better under Izzo? Maybe. But I don't know. Tubby Smith produced a lot of good players. Could Crawford have been more of a Charlie Bell type of guy that was a great college player that the pros didn't initially love as much as they should have? Went over to Europe, did really well, made a lot of money in Europe. At a high level of basketball, came back and played for the Milwaukee Bucks for a while and made it in the NBA later. Allen Anderson, I think, went that route also, made it later. Could Joe Crawford have been a guy that would have come back and made it later better? Possibly. I think it's more of a early bloomer type situation with him, because you're probably thinking back about how high he was ranked as a 10th grader and how he didn't end up amounting to as much in college. And we talked about Torbert here a couple of weeks ago. Torbert had an injury in high school that took away some of his athleticism, and he never quite got that back. That's one of the reasons he didn't quite become as good as he was ranked. Let's go back to the questions here. I got to find my place. All right, this is a tough one. Michigan State University is our friend from Bay Harbor, Michigan, via Walled Lake, via Flint. He said, "Com, did you watch Casey Mize's first start for the Detroit Tigers? If so, what were your thoughts?" Casey Mize, rookie, first-round draft pick. Was he the first player taken 2 years ago from Auburn? What did he go, like 2-3 innings? I didn't watch it. I'm interested in him. He pitched tonight also, and I didn't watch it. The other kid, Skubal, 10th round pick. Both those guys came up for the Tigers last week. Leland and Trammell went down there, watched him in Toledo, brought him up there. Skubal is like 6'4", 6'5", left-hander. The thing about Skubal, he looked really good yesterday. When you watch him, it's interesting because his lead glove, I'll do it right-handed instead of left-handed, but his lead glove, you're supposed to tuck the glove armpit here and throw like this. His front side is way open with the glove, which at the youth level, they stamp that out. He does it and doesn't seem to hurt him, and he'll do it on an off-speed pitch or a fastball, and he's throwing 95, left-handed. And off-speed, like Frank Tanana off-speed stuff, it looked like. I just watched him a little bit. I've not watched him a ton. Yesterday, there was either the first or second inning, gave up a leadoff double, and then struck out the next 3 batters with a variety of pitches. Skubal, an interesting rookie pitcher. But no, I've not seen Mize yet. Looking forward to it. Michigan State University says, back to MSU Athletics. It's about that time to start speculating about the college hoop season. Have you talked to Coach Izzo regarding the upcoming season? And do you believe the Big Ten NCAA will be able to pull off an entire season, including the tournament, without interruption? Yes, I'm going to say I think they are going to pull off a whole season without interruption, including the tournament. I know things will get different sports-wise when we go indoors, when it's not a professional bubble, but I think that they'll have. Fashenko says Mize had trouble commanding his pitches tonight. Must not have done very well for the Tigers. Sorry to hear that. As far as I just think that, and also Big Ten with basketball. If the football thing goes off in the SEC and the ACC without much of a hiccup, I mean Big Ten basketball. I know it's not nearly as much money, but the heat is going to be on, I would think, for Big Ten basketball to play and not sit out and let the other schools play. I know the presidents are still going to be doing the presidential things, and I respect some of that, a lot of it most of the time. I've been talking about on this thing for a couple weeks, like I'm championing the presidents because I'm glad that the presidents came forward and reminded everybody that they're in charge, and these are academic institutions. These are not professional sports franchises. And here I am 2 weeks later, buyer's remorse, and I'm saying, yeah, but what about the sports? Now, of course, I'm in the sports writing business, and our website stands to get hit and hurt this fall because there is no football. I try to put that aside because that's going to be my natural bias, right? But I also don't believe in doing the wrong thing in order for benefit for my stupid little job. You know, big picture, grand scheme of things, what's right, what's noble, what's ethical. I like for the universities to act like universities and not professional sports franchises. I realize they've got professional sports, professionalism of sports. We know that. They sell tickets, they make billions of dollars. But I think it's good once in a while for a president to step in once in a while and say, wait a minute. I'm in charge here, no football. And we all get all pissed off about it. But it's a good reminder that these are universities. Now, in some parts of the country where sports just mean more, maybe they're more prone to make major mistakes. I don't know. Or, in this case, maybe they were correct to kick the can down the road. And now that they have the reverse bubbleization going on, by that I mean these colleges weren't planning on creating athletic bubbles, but they're going to end up having de facto bubbles because the athletes were welcomed back to campus, returned to campus in June, went through quarantine various different ways, various methods. You remember what happened with Clemson. They survived it so far, you know. So the athletes are on campus establishing somewhat of a bubble. Then at some places, students come back and it goes south. And at Michigan State, students aren't going to be back. Everything's virtual. I suspect that might happen at other campuses. Everything's virtual. Hasn't happened yet, but that could happen. Athletes are already on campus. Athletes already have a handle on this. Athletes are already getting tested X number of times. You take the students out of the equation, now you have a bubble. Now, that would have been bad optics in the spring if you would have said, as athletic departments, hey, we're going to set up a bubble. We're not going to have any of our students back, but we're going to have our athletes. Everybody said, well, if you can't have students, how can you have athletes? That's bad optics. It's a bad way to go about things. Yes, that's the bad way to go about things in terms of initial intentions. But now that as it's turning out, they're getting the same result in a backward way of doing it, the other way. And I'm not saying that was the intention from the beginning. They just happen to have the athletes on campus first. Students came in, not working out. Students go home. Athletes are still here. Now that bubble of athletes has an even better and better chance of succeeding. And from where I sit, the chances of the SEC and the ACC playing football, to me, seems like it's improving. The chances of them playing seems to be improving. I might be wrong. You guys can chime in. Let me know if I'm crazy. And my opinion on that stuff changes like every 72 hours, if not every 48 hours. So that's what I think. I don't know, though. I certainly don't have the ability to tell the future. And you know what? Nobody does. We can guess. But anybody that tells me that they know exactly what the future is going to be and to tell me that I'm stupid because I don't know the future, you better have a lot of PhDs and degrees because I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen. And I will listen to anyone's opinion on that because I don't know. All right, Michigan State University says, I can't thank you and the SpartanMag community enough for your support over the past couple of months. I know that he went through some real tough times and he's still fighting off the ropes. SpartanMag is truly a family, and you've been so much more than a business owner to us over the years. Thanks for saying that to me, but you're also saying thank you to the entire SpartanMag.com community. And the community does rally around our members and our maggers and our subscribers who do face some tough times. And glad you're fighting off the ropes. Glad you're around. Look forward to getting to know you better, man. All right, Big Don from DeWitt says, that's a guy that I do know locally. Good guy. I haven't seen him in a while. Hope he's doing well. He says, hi, Jim. While the extent of the budget hole is impossible to tell, predicated on playing football in the spring and the amount of revenue gained from that, major cuts will still be needed. Have you heard any talk of how they will address the looming deficit or sports that may be cut? Do you think they should act proactively like Iowa did? Iowa, of course, the Hawkeyes cut, 4 sports this week? And there's estimates that they might only save $1 million. We went over that last week about how non-revenue sports usually operate between $800,000 and maybe $1.1 million at Michigan State. That's salaries and scholarships. I heard Greg Ianni talking about this today on the Stout Show. He was saying that it's not just those dollars, but there's also a lot of support staff dollars that you can save by cutting some sports. Because Iowa cuts 4 sports, that might be a total of, I don't know, 100 athletes, maybe 40 scholarship athletes, I don't know, maybe 100 total. All 100 of those are getting gear, uniforms, practice gear. All of them are getting training table, food, and, medical attention, academic support. So the fewer athletes you have, then you can also more easily reduce your staff numbers in the support areas. So you save some money there also. Still just a drop in the bucket when you consider that Iowa was expecting to lose $100 million if they don't play football this year, and Michigan State would be in a similar situation. So you're asking me, have I heard anything? Do I think Michigan State will do that? Not proactively, not initially, not like Iowa did. I'm not hearing anything like that. Beekman said last week it's a never say never type of situation. He will try to protect all of those sports. So it's quiet right now. I know there are some nervous people. What can they do about it? I don't know. A lot of it's pretty complicated. When you go from having $100 million that you think is going to come in, all of a sudden that cash flow just gets turned off. You can borrow money. There's bonds. You can kind of go that route, but I've not heard anything. Everything's pretty quiet over there right now. Question number 6 from MSU Polo out of Rockford, Michigan. He says, hey, Comp, football recruiting question for you. Any insight as to whether fewer spots will now be available in the 2021 recruiting class as a result of the extra year that the senior players on the current team will get? And that's from the news this week about the NCAA Oversight Committee, the council recommendation, which was adopted last Friday, I guess it was, that said, I'm reading it right here, the financial aid of fall sports senior student athletes who take advantage of the additional year of eligibility and extended clock will not count against the team's limits for 2021-22, the 85 scholarship limit. The NCAA, as many of you may know, NCAA is taking all the seniors right now, and if you play 1 game this year or 10 games this year, you'll get an extra senior year. They're just doing a blanket statement because some teams might play 4 games, some teams might play 8 games, some teams might play in the spring, might not. Instead of looking case by case, they just went all seniors, come back next year. Would have been interesting if they'd have done that for basketball in the spring. Now, I know Cassius Winston played an entire regular season, but what if he wanted to come back next year? Probably not. He'd probably want to do the NBA thing. However, imagine if they would have done a blanket statement after the NCAA tournament was canceled last March, and at that same instant, name, image, and likeness went through positively. Imagine that. If they would have given all those seniors another year, and oh, by the way, Cassius Winston, you can go sign a deal right now with, I don't know, Quality Dairy, and some other people that would have had maybe more money. Could he have made good money to stay for an extra year? I don't know. But anyway, blanket situation for those seniors, but also everybody's going to get an extra year of eligibility. So they all get 6 years to play 5, And he says, what's that going to do for recruiting classes? Or somebody asked that question. What does that do for recruiting classes? It's going to make, they will have to have some thin recruiting classes unless you run off players. And D'Antonio was always reluctant to do that. People like Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh, proactive in running off players to create more scholarship room. I think Michigan State's going to run off players. I think everybody's going to have to do it. Because all of a sudden you're still going to have to stay under 85 scholarships. This year, you're allowed to go over 85 by however many seniors you have. And I think Michigan State only has like 7 or 8 or 9 seniors. Well, more than that if you count the ones that have already redshirted. We talked about that last week also. So what I don't know is someone like Jordan Reed. He's a 4th-year senior right now, Jacob Panashuk. So they get an extra year. They can play this spring and next year. So that gives them 5. So that's not technically a 6th year for those true seniors that didn't redshirt. I'm guessing. I'm still having a hard time getting my head completely around that thing. But after this year, they'll give you more than 85 for 1 year. Then you have to get back under 85. I mean, it's a rule. The NCAA can change rules whenever they want. But if you have to get back under 85 and your current juniors, I don't know, someone like Xavier Henderson, if he can play this year and get an extra year of eligibility and be a junior again next fall, I'm not sure how that all works. But anyway, you're going to have more players, and unless you run people off, you will get stuck with recruiting classes of 15, 17 people until this all gets ironed out. And I saw a quote from Shane Lyons, athletic director at West Virginia. He was the chairman of the football oversight committee, and he said, we had to look at what was in front of us today, and that's taking care of the athletes on our rosters right now. So that's why they wanted to give the seniors blanket extra year of eligibility. As for how the numbers logjam later after that with everybody getting a 6th year, he says, quote, it all works its way out. He says, it may be greater numbers, but we can work through that with the normal attrition you have on your rosters, as well as discussions with athletes in the coming years about their playing time and their interest in potentially transferring to other institutions, unquote. Well, isn't he a caring individual? This is going to open up the door to widespread cutting of players, running players off. And Shane Lyons, athletic director at West Virginia, chairman of the football oversight committee, that's football oversight. That's encouraging, in my opinion, unethical behavior. Anyway, question number 7. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, hey, Jim, saw some previous posts on the bunker about which former MSU quarterback would you choose to lead your team? Wondering what is the Comparoni Power Index of top former quarterbacks. Sparty says, my pick is Drew Stanton. Although he wasn't the most successful quarterback, I felt he did the most with what he had to work with. I never saw Eddie Smith play a lot. I'd like to see him in today's offenses. Looking at the quarterbacks that have had success recently, Connor Cook, Kirk Cousins. I agree with you. I would go with Drew Stanton. No, he didn't have much success. He had no defense to work with. That was in the days of the Chris Smeeland defenses. They couldn't bust a grape. They couldn't stop anything. And no fault of the players necessarily. But Drew Stanton's out there doing what he can. But however many points he scored, the defense couldn't protect what was going on. I think Stanton was excellent. Good runner. We saw that. NFL backup type of quarterback. I thought he had some really good games. I remember the Hawaii game. The one back here in East Lansing. He did some things perfectly. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen Drew Stanton play with a Mark D'Antonio defense. So I would go with Drew Stanton over Connor Cook. Connor Cook did some great things at Michigan State. He had a great defense. 2013 as a sophomore, there were many times when Connor Cook made a mistake and threw a pick 6, but the guy dropped it. In the Ohio State game, did that. He was operating on thin ice a lot. I love the way Connor Cook could, at the college level, could really snap around and process so quickly. And when you watch some replays on the Big Ten Network, some of those teams that Connor Cook played for, I'm reminded of how quickly he could process. At the college level, he was excellent with that. Injured late in his career against Maryland, wasn't quite right against, at Alabama in the semifinals, was not quite right against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. Shoulder. I'd like to ask him if he was ever quite right professionally. I'm not sure if he would tell me or not, but I'm not sure he ever got his arm completely back. He was good, certainly good as a senior. Kirk Cousins went through some growing pains as a sophomore and a junior, had a lot of self-belief, and sometimes when things got a little bit hot, and he didn't have the greatest defenses either, so there were times when he needed to make plays, down by 10 minutes to go, that's when sometimes he would try to throw it through defensive players, and he would throw the interception at that point. Senior year, had a real good season. Coulda, woulda, shoulda went to the Rose Bowl. If they'd went to the Rose Bowl, he would have been in that Spartan legendary category. Maybe he still should be. He certainly did enough to win that game against Wisconsin in the bowl game, in the Big Ten championship game. Should have been a Rose Bowl quarterback. To his credit, rallied the guys. They beat a very good Georgia team. In the Outback Bowl or the Capital One Bowl. Can't remember which one it was. But I'm not going to go with Cousins. And Cousins has been a good NFL quarterback, better than Drew Stanton. I hope Cousins has a real good year this year. We'll be keeping an eye on him. But I think I'm going to go with Drew Stanton. Let's go. A few more questions. We'll wrap this thing up. Michigan State, Pat in Atlanta, Georgia says, we've seen Rocky Lombardi in many of the Michigan State promo videos. I think many on the board thought Payton Thorne may be the one to emerge as the starter. Should we take that Rocky may be the man based on the videos so far? What have your inside sources been saying? Well, the people that run the videos, when you go to do some videos, you're going to videotape a little bit of everybody, but there's something about Rocky Lombardi. He's a very visible player with that blonde hair. Everybody knows him. He started a few times, but right now he's one of the faces of the program. So when you've got a camera, you might make a conscious decision to show Rocky Lombardi. If it were me, I would show him because I can recognize him. Some of the other guys, younger players, I might not exactly know. Without a number and a helmet, without a number, I might not recognize who's who, but you can recognize Rocky Lombardi. Like Jack Camper. I saw Jack Camper the other day, and I had to ask him who he was because I was talking to him a little bit outside the football building. He had his hair cut real short. I didn't recognize him. If he had his number on, I'd recognize him. Lombardi, we can all recognize Lombardi. Most of us, I guess. So that's one reason Lombardi is getting a lot of video. I wouldn't look too greatly into that, but in one of the videos, it looked like his arms are getting jacked up pretty good. That's a former highly ranked high school wrestler who's continuing to fill out. You gotta like. Everybody likes Rocky Lombardi. Good guy. Payton Thorne, we'll see whether he can do more. All that we've got on Payton Thorne right now is high school film. Never saw him in a green-white game. So I know Brad Salem liked him. I've said that here a bunch of times. Any insight on how things are going? They started practice on a Friday, and it was shut down by the next Monday. They practiced on Tuesday. I don't know if they practiced on Saturday and Sunday. Probably Saturday. Not sure about Sunday. I think they did. They practiced Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Big Ten shut them down on Monday. They came back, practiced on Tuesday, got pulled off the field. So 3 or 4 practices, no pads. So, did the coaches begin to have some opinions on Thorne, Theo Day, and Rocky Lombardi? I'm sure they did. I've not heard what those opinions are. I haven't heard anything from inside sources either. But you really have to wait to get pads on and have at least one scrimmage for them really to get an idea whether or not someone like Payton Thorne can handle all the bullets flying. We asked Mel Tucker about that last week, and he said not enough practices, which is a diplomatic way of kind of not giving any players too much credit and not giving another player reason to transfer right now. Because, if you say, hey, yeah, right now, Lombardi's looking really good, Thorne is a little bit better, Theo Day's way behind. If you say that, Theo Day's transferring the next day. You don't want that to happen. You want to look at them and get them out there for scrimmages and so forth. So there's a chance we could interview Jay Johnson and other coaches here in the future. The MSU sports information staff said that that's possible, if not probable. So we can ask him that. And Jay Johnson was pretty quotable in the spring when we asked him about those quarterbacks and what he liked about them. I would imagine he would continue to say an equal amount of positive things about all of them. That's just the way things are done. All right, here we go. Taylor from Baltimore says, thanks, Jim, for keeping these going without a Big Ten football season. I always look forward to SpartanMag Live, along with all the other great content on the website and message boards. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that, Taylor. He says, with some, and I'm going to have to wrap this up because I'm losing my voice. You guys are probably sick of hearing me sound like Tony Fauci. Anyway, That's what Dr. Sam Stanley calls Anthony Fauci, Tony Fauci. All right. He says, with some states planning to play high school football, while Michigan will not play high school football, do you know if any of our commitments from Michigan, Watson, Harmon, or Prim, etc., are planning to move out of state to chase valuable playing time this fall? No, I've not heard that. And it's so late in the game now, I don't think that's going to be happening. He says on the flip side, and some, it takes money to do that too, and it's hard to generate that money quickly sometimes. It's hard to generate money in general. On the flip side, are any of the scholarship offers in jeopardy if a kid does not play this season? My understanding is that Tyson Watson is somewhat of a defensive line project recruit. If Michigan State staff sees game film this season of an alternative player that looks much better, could they go after that kid instead? Answer is yes, they could. Harmon, I think, is the guy that's more of whoa, Detroit Spartan. Detroit Spartan, ring the bell big. Big. Detroit Spartan. I'm humbled for that kind of sponsorship today, man. I'm humbled, and I really appreciate it. Appreciate the support you've had for SpartanMag and our message board over the years. That's above and beyond, and we really, really appreciate that. Michigan State Spartan, thanks a lot. Wow, ringing the bell. I should have a cannon instead of a bell for that one. Wow, thanks, man. All right, so anyway, I got to get back to talking about Derrick Harmon. I think Harmon is the guy that you think is more of a project than Watson. So I think you might have him mixed up with Watson. Watson's more of a 5 technique from Mott. Watson is pretty solid. You don't see Watson on film really turn the corner real well, but I'm not sure. I'm not saying that he can't. I'm saying that his highlights don't really show that. It would have been nice to see him in a t-shirt camp to see if he could do that. You're asking if they see someone better than Watson or any player, might they cut bait and go after someone else? Yes, I mean, college programs do that. I don't think it's a good look, but I think Michigan State is going to do that. I think that's what they did at Alabama. That's what they do at Georgia. Georgia, they recruit at a higher level. I'm not saying any of those players are in danger, but that is always a possibility. And I can't really think of anyone on the commitment list right now that might be in danger of that happening to. But will they do it? You'll find out when I do. That's not the type of thing they're going to tell us up front. Hey, we're looking to back off on somebody and take somebody else. As far as, someone else asked me about Harmon. I'll get to that one also. Macklin JB says, is Derrick Harmon severely underrated? He was listed at over 6'4", 359 recently at the Rising Stars camp and supposedly moved well at that size with good handwork. If that's true, how is a guy that size ranked so low? Great question, and I agree with you, and I think that he is underrated, and I've said here before that I think Harmon is underrated. Not only as a prospect, but also the fact that he's 6'4", 350, can play defensive tackle. There are not a lot of human beings capable of providing that role on a football field. Not many people walking the earth capable of doing that. He's ranked number 29 in the state of Michigan right now. He's ranked the number 2 defensive tackle in the state of Michigan. When you ask college coaches what are the positions that are hardest to find, defensive tackle is way up there because there's not many people that can do it. And right now, if there's only 2 in the state, the number 1 player in the state, Payne, he's going to Alabama. And you look through the listings looking for another defensive tackle, and there are none. Now, I think Watson from Mott, he's a defensive end right now. I think he could move inside and become a defensive tackle like Joel Heath did. There are not many defensive tackles. But here's one, Derrick Harmon. And he was 6'4", 325 at Detroit Loyola. Okay? Now he shows up at this other camp, and they've got him at 6'4.5". And like you said, he was listed at 359. And I watched film of that thing. I was not there. That was in March. The one film of the Rising, at that one in March, Michigan State, I think, was playing basketball that day. But I saw some good film on it. And T-shirt, and he looked well proportioned. I didn't see much bad weight on that guy. He's just a big dude with long arms, long legs, long arms for a big dude. I'm not seeing much sloppy weight, and I'm seeing quick feet, and I'm seeing him, flip his hips and get sideways for like a shoulder club. And you watch his junior film, and he's got power, as you would imagine, at 350, 340, 350 now. But he's not just bull rush. You watch his junior film, and you'll see shoulder club, arm over. You watch, and you'll see it on the junior film also, and you saw it in the t-shirt camp. He'll dip the shoulder at 340. I mean, he'll make a move and dip the shoulder and make himself small, and he freeze frame it in his ankles. He's got his hips out, ankle flexibility. And I'm like, I was going to put this on the message board and ask Dorsey, because Dorsey's been to a lot of camps. And I would say, when have you seen a dude move like this? First of all, you don't see guys that size. And if you do see them that size, especially in this part of the country, they're usually carrying too much bad weight or they lack endurance. This guy's got hands also. He's been well coached with his hands. He was offered by Memphis and Ole Miss at the time that he committed to Michigan State. And he's got plenty of brute strength, but doesn't rely just on brute strength. And I mentioned before that I like his junior films better than I liked Jonathan Hankins. Jonathan Hankins played with Golston. Was that at Detroit Loyola also? Where was Golston? Someone tell me. I should know that. Hankins liked Michigan State, wanted to go to Michigan State. Narduzzi wasn't so sure because they had some bad luck with some jumbo defensive tackles, thought he might be another one. And at that time, there was the influx of the new football with the, snapping the ball warp speed like Oregon at 12, 13 seconds. Rich Rodriguez had just gotten hired at Michigan, and there was a thought that football was changing, and the days of having a jumbo defensive tackle were running out because you couldn't get him off the field because you can't sub because teams are snapping so fast. So they didn't go after Hankins. Hankins went to Ohio State, was excellent, and he's a pro. Detroit Southeastern, yeah, Golston, thank you. And so was Hankins. Who was Detroit Loyola? There was a good player from Detroit Loyola several years ago. Anyway, I think that Harmon's film as a junior is better than Hankins's was. And I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Hankins, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, this guy is uncommon. Malik McDowell went to Detroit Loyola. Thanks. All right. So I was thinking big defensive lineman, Detroit. I knew one was in Loyola. Okay, McDowell. So Harmon, at number 29 in the state, I think that he's more valuable than that and underrated because he plays a position and is a body type that is so hard to find. And the way he moved in the t-shirt camps, that was March, okay? I would have loved to have seen him this summer. But if you're a Michigan State fan, you might not have wanted that to happen. Because if he would have found his way to Alabama's camp, I'm dead serious. If he had found his way to some other camps, there might have been some scary offers come his way. All right? Now, when I saw him, and I'll have to post it on the board, and some of you may have seen it. I think Detroit, what's that? There's a really good sports website out of Detroit that does a good job with high school film. They were there. They did a real good series of cut-ups on Harmon. So shout out to them. I can't think of who they are. Detroit Sports. They've got like a red D. It's not an old English D, but it's like almost like the Red Wings Detroit logo. Anyway, that was in March. Guys that are that big, sometimes you never know where their weight is going to fluctuate. So that was before the lockdown, and now there's no season in the fall. Is he keeping an eye on his weight? I don't know. I don't know what he looks like today. But in March, long arms, man, and smart hands and some power. And, he had one or two reps as an offensive tackle, too, and looked good. And I was looking at that film, and not very often you see guys 6'4", 330. And I'm thinking, when have I seen a guy that looks like that? And I was going to show Matt Dorsey and ask him what he thought. And the name I came up with was Joseph Barksdale. It's the last time I've seen a guy come through Michigan State's camp with that type of frame, with some athleticism and power. And Barksdale went to LSU, became an offensive tackle, NFL guy. Excellent player. Again, not saying this guy's going to be there, but I'm just saying there's just not many people like that. And I'm impressed as heck with what he looked like. I thought his junior film was good, real good, underrated. They're all projects to some extent, but I don't call him a project as much when he's already got size and hands and feet. I mean, you watch him and I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But when it comes to D linemen at SpartanMag.com, we usually have a pretty good success rate at what these guys have the ability to become. A lot of work needs to be done. We'll see what happens in the spring if they have high school football in the state. I'll be interested to see what he looks like at Detroit Loyola. And I just think that I doubt Michigan State would want to trade him for many other defensive tackles in the Midwest. I know Payne is great. I said that Payne is the best junior film I think I've ever seen a defensive tackle in the state of Michigan going to Alabama. So Harmon, I think he's a player. I think he's an excellent prospect. Underrated for sure. So I agree with you on that. Let's go here to the chat area. We've already gone 90 minutes. I apologize about that. It's good to have this little fireside chat. No fires yet, though, unless it's an outdoor campfire. So I guess it's a campfire, a fire chat of sorts. And again, thanks a lot to Michigan State University. Too kind. Really appreciate it. And the other guys that have chimed in, really appreciate it, man. That makes it a little bit easier to work. You know what I'm saying? Appreciate it. All right. Chris Tranum says, kind of crazy. Let me jack up the point size here because my eyes suck. Chris Tranum says, kind of crazy. According to measurables, Harmon is the same height and weight as the former Bama player Terrence Cody, 6'4", 345. You know what, man? I was thinking Terrence Cody today, and I didn't see your post before I said the Alabama thing. Mount Cody. Terrence Cody came in as a junior college guy for Saban. And you're probably saying that because earlier in the podcast here, I was talking about that Harmon is the type of guy that I think is powerful enough to play nose and two gap at a 3-4. And I think he's also athletic enough to play a one gapping nose tackle in a 4-3. So he's the type of guy, if he can, man, I don't want to put him in the Hall of Fame yet, but he's the type of guy that could enable you to fluctuate from a 3-4 to a 4-3. I've not heard the coaches say that. I've not heard Hazelton say he's interested in it. Tucker, I don't know if he wants to do that in the future. They've done that at Georgia and Alabama. But yeah, I was thinking Terrence Cody. Now, when Cody was at Alabama, I don't know if they did any 4-3 at that point. At that point, they might have gone strictly to 3-4 during his short time. Marcel Darius the same way. Remember when he killed Tyler O'Connor? I mean, the tackles that Alabama has had. And they're great at every position, but it's got to start right there, a defensive tackle on defense. Otherwise, the boat don't float. Bjorn Charlie says, will programs that didn't get the opportunity to have a spring game have a fall game instead? If we don't have a spring season, what can we expect for roster size going forward? That's what I was saying last week. And when Mel Tucker was saying that once they found out that the season was started, they revamped the calendar and said, okay, it's January. We are in January mode. We are in winter conditioning mode right now for 6.5 weeks. And I asked Mel Tucker what happens after the 6.5 weeks, and he says, we're going to have to wait and see what the rules are. He didn't come out and say it, but I was thinking after 6.5 weeks, they would be primed for a spring football session in November, if you're counting down toward a season starting March 1st. But now they're talking possibly starting a season January 5th. I'm not saying that anyone in the Big Ten is saying that officially, but that's some of the chatter. I don't know how credible that is. But when they postponed the season, the presidents postponed the season. And at that point, the ADs, this was dropped on their laps. And they're like, oh, crap, what do we do now? Well, we're going to tell everybody we're playing in the spring. But they hadn't really devised a plan of what that was going to be because the presidents told them no football. Now they're going to be like, all right, how are we going to do that? So you can guarantee the Big Ten athletic directors have been talking amongst themselves about spring season. Do we want to start it in January and get it done so that 2021 is better? And Bill Beekman says that is, I think he says that is the main priority, to make the fall of 2021 back to normal. 12 games, non-conference games, selling tickets to get the cash flow going again. So they don't want to go too late into the spring that would curtail anything in the fall. And you're going to want to be competitive in the fall. You don't want to start the spring season March 15th, go all the way to June, and then ask your players, then ask Michigan State, for instance, to go out and play the Miami Hurricanes 4 months later, whereas the Hurricanes have had the usual 9 months off. See what I'm saying? So they're gearing things toward 2021, a full season in 2021. That would sound like they would like to start playing, in January. People have talked about the only way to do that is to have indoor bubbles. Play 3 or 4 games at Ford Field, 3 or 4 games in Indianapolis, 2 or 3 games in Minneapolis, and do it in the domes. You'd have to rent those domes, of course. And that would not be cheap, but they'd have to do it, and would Ford trade advertising to Michigan State for use of the Ford Field for free? Like, yeah, well, let's use our field. Just at Michigan State, we want a billboard in the stadium for 3 years. Now, Michigan, they don't have billboards. You go back, 8, 9, 10 years ago when General Motors was going through bankruptcy, and General Motors, Michigan State had a deal with General Motors, had General Motors signage at the stadium, and General Motors was no more. General Motors wasn't able to pay their bills, but Mark Hollis said, don't worry, General Motors, we will keep your signs up there. Even though you cannot pay us, you are... we have a sponsorship relationship with you. You are a partner. We are sponsoring. We are keeping General Motors up, signage-wise, until you get your feet on the ground. Then we'll get back to business. Would Ford do that for Michigan and Michigan State to help them out? Maybe they don't need help. Maybe they won't. I'm not sure. But you're asking any chance for a fall game. I would think so. But I also know that the Big Ten coaches are not happy. Well, no, they can't do it because they're not practicing in pads right now. They're not having the equivalent of a spring season right now because they're not able to practice in pads. They're able to wear helmets. They're able to have footballs. It's supposed to be non-contact. You can probably believe that there's some contact going on. There's probably some offensive line versus defensive line. There's probably some of that going on. Maybe, but then you could get into some injury situations too. Not sure. But anyway, they're going 12 hours a week, which coaches are not happy with. James Franklin voiced his displeasure with that. He had an interesting quote. Let's see if I've got that quote. Franklin said, I can't understand how us being able to work with our players for 12 hours when other teams are getting the full season, how that's in the best interest of college football, how that's in the best interest of our student athletes, how that's in the best interest of the Big Ten, specifically at Penn State, unquote. That's James Franklin. I don't always agree with him, but I agree with him on that. It seems like Michigan State and the Big Ten teams should be having the ability to have full-fledged spring practice right now, pads. I assume they're not doing it partly because the contact thing. They're worried about, for the reasons that they shut down the season, they were worried about putting on the pads and having that. So the 12-hour rule is an NCAA rule, not a Big Ten rule. So the Big Ten, I don't know, do they counter the NCAA and say they want more hours than that? I'm not sure. But you're asking a fall game instead of a spring game. I think it's possible. I was kind of hoping that would be the case a month ago, especially if the rest of the college football nation was down, but it doesn't look like the rest of the college football nation is going to be down. So, no, I don't think there'll be a fall game in November right now because, like I said, they're not in pads. Secondly, Michigan State's not gearing toward that. Michigan State is taking this period to go strength and conditioning. Now, some of the conditioning they do get on the field with the football. You may have seen some of the film last week that they released of them playing ultimate football. Basically, the rules looked similar, I would imagine, to ultimate frisbee. I'm not an expert on ultimate frisbee, but You guys might remember Air Force football, intramural football at Michigan State. Not quite the same thing. Similar to that, similar to Ultimate Frisbee, they played a game similar to that at Michigan State's football camp in the old days under Bobby Williams and John L. Smith, specifically under Bobby Williams. They called it Razzle Dazzle, which was basically ultimate football or similar to Air Force football. Forward laterals, but you can't run with it. They want to do that, but with razzle dazzle at the camps, they wanted to see how guys moved. So even linemen would get the balls in their hands. They get the football in their hand, and they'd make moves. And at camp, they used that as an evaluation tool. D'Antonio didn't use that as much. He just wanted he was more straightforward with camp type drills. Anyway, so Michigan State's getting on the field a little bit with the football for something like that. Are they also going to be doing some routes and some installation? Initially, he said no. Tucker said all conditioning, all strength. He's going to work on the Jimmies and Joes rather than X's and O's. They were happy with the retention of X's and O's as players came from the Zoom meetings, 4 months of, or however many months of quarantine Zoom meetings, came to the meeting rooms, first days of practice. They were happy with the retention and their knowledge of what they were doing. They need to get these guys bigger and stronger. That's what they're using the 12 hours a week for right now. Like Big Mooby said, the players can also go on their own and do 7-on-7 on their own. So you can be sure they're doing that, and they're doing it with their route tree, their play calls, and their defensive schemes. So that's being done. Not with coaches, though. Justin Thinn talking about Stephen Johnson. Gordon Tenona asks if Stephen Johnson committed. He's the corner out of Venice, Florida. Originally was committed to Rutgers. Justin Thinn, who's doing a great job for us, says Johnson has not committed, but we're still the leader. Talking about Michigan State. He dropped a top 5 a week ago. Ed Francis says Bell went to John Glenn Westland. John Glenn. Bell. Westland, John Glenn. I can't remember who we were talking about. Ty Garland checking in from Oak Park. Good to hear from Ty Garland. Chris Trainham says DePorres was an enigma. Carl Grimes. I was bummed that he didn't pan out. Carl Grimes' brother David Grimes did okay at Notre Dame. Carl Grimes came here under John L. Smith. Stocky receiver. John L. Smith and his people compared him to, who was the little slot receiver for, Le'Veon Bell? Talking about Le'Veon Bell? He's saying Bell went to John Glenn, Westland, John Glenn. Le'Veon Bell did not go to Westland, John Glenn. Went to Groveport, Madison, didn't he? He's from Ohio, of course. Not from Westland. Westland. Who was from Westland? Mike Madonna was from Westland. A little bit of a hockey theme tonight. So, Carl Grimes, stocky little receiver. Yeah, Langford. Jeremy Langford went to Westland, John Glenn. Did Keyshawn Martin go there also? Keyshawn Martin went there also, right? That's another one of those scattershot schools that was good for a second. All right, Carl Grimes. There was a slot receiver for the Patriots out of Louisville that John L. Smith had at Louisville. They went to Louisville, played on some of those early Tom Brady teams. I think it was MVP of a Super Bowl, I'm sorry. And when Michigan State, John L. Smith recruited Carl Grimes, they said, we see you to be this type of player. And that guy was an NFL Super Bowl MVP. They got Grimes. Grimes was highly rated, stocky guy, had some burst, maybe a little bit stiff. Stuck around for a while, didn't make it, cut out, transferred somewhere, never made it. That was a curious one. Was ranked high, was a good high school player, came in. Michigan State had the spread offense, was going to throw it around a lot. Seemed like he'd be a natural guy to be featured, but it didn't work out. Estime is better than Edwards. I do not disagree with that. Talking about Audric Estime and Donovan Edwards. Some of those other guys, the other running backs that Michigan State was looking at, specifically the kid from Deion Branch. Yeah, that's who you're talking. That's who I'm talking about from Deion Branch, Patriots, Louisville. Thank you. The running back from Louisiana that Michigan State was in on, committed somewhere else. I thought he was better than Donovan Edwards. Estime, he's got some thickness, got some quickness, got some agility. It's not like he's great it's not like he's got great power or great speed or great elusiveness, but he's kind of a combination of all of that, which sometimes if you mix it with good vision and, of course, good blocking, it can be very effective. A guy can eat up a lot of yards that way. Donovan Edwards, pretty good. I think they're similar. One is ranked real high, but Estime's a 4-star now. So it's not a big upset when a 4-star becomes better than someone who's ranked the number 2 running back in the country. But I don't disagree with what you're saying there. Estime could be better than Edwards. Cameron Trigg says, what are the 22 basketball guys Izzo will be targeting? The big kid from Grand Blanc, Ty Rogers, is an interesting one. Gosh, I was asked this last week, and got into it a little bit, but we've not really. I'm sorry about the pauses there, but I mean everything has happened so quickly with so much success with the 2021 class, and now people are ready to shift gears. If I look at my notes here, there's there have been some. I don't know if I'll have to get into that next week. I mean, there's some of the names before, like Sonny Johnson and Donovan Clingan and Bryce Thompson and some of those guys. I don't know. Michigan State lost out on Caleb First to Purdue or something like that. But there's Javon Hanna from Mount Clemens. Izzo talked to him in August. And, Trayvon Lewis from Ferndale's a 6'5" guy. These guys haven't gotten on the court this summer, so it's kind of hard to evaluate where they are. So Michigan State is staying current with a lot of these guys. A.J. Casey is the guy from Tinley Park, Illinois, number 20 player in the country. There's Jalen Washington out of Gary, Indiana, number 24 in the country. So those are some of the big timer guys. Robert Coward, 6'4", from Alpharetta, Georgia, number 75 in the country. Ty Rogers out of Grand Blanc, number 39 in the country. Konendijk went and watched him play a couple of weeks ago. His feeling is that Rogers out of Grand Blanc could be a tricky one. A.J. Casey, I don't know where he is. He's from Chicago, Tinley Park, number 21 in the country. Iowa State and Michigan State called him on June 15th. Indiana, Iowa, Gonzaga also in there. Of course, Enoch Boachi is a 2022, but he's planning to reclassify is the word. And there's others. But I'll have to get that more organized. Those are the guys that I was keeping tabs with like 2 months ago, but I've not taken another closer look at the 2022 class. Because a lot of those guys, well, Bates committed and Boachi committed, but a lot of those guys, their recruitment really has stalled because they're younger guys. They didn't have the summer AAU season, so their recruitment is really stalled. Michigan State is in on a lot of them and blanket recruiting a lot of them, and maybe not going full blast for a lot of them. Some of those guys that were top 25, yes, they are, but those guys are going to be waiting. So 2022 basketball recruiting is pretty peculiar right now, and I'll have to make some phone calls to see what's going on with those. Thanks for asking. That's not that. I wanted to try to tackle that because I've been asked that 3 or 4 times, and it was time for me to get into that one a little bit. All right. You asked about Antonio Gates Jr. He's going to be here tomorrow, right? Carter 917 asked that. I'm trying to find this one out. Mel Tucker was a GA at Michigan State right around the time that Antonio Gates was here. And Antonio Gates was here for a short time, but Mel Tucker was a do-everything GA and spent all his time in the football office. And he spent a lot of time alongside Ken Manny in the weight room, because Mel Tucker said that was the best way to get to know an entire football team is to be in the weight room with the guys. So I think there's a good chance that Tucker at least crossed paths a few times way back then with a young Antonio Gates in the weight room. And then, of course, Mel Tucker being in the NFL for a number of years, I'm sure crossed paths with him again, with Tucker being with the Bears and the Jaguars, and Gates doing his thing with the Chargers. They probably crossed paths again. If they had already crossed paths once in MSU football, they probably exchanged hellos at least a couple of times in the NFL ranks. And I wonder if that's helping Michigan State getting a foot in the door with Antonio Gates. I don't know what the foot in the door is, but Antonio Gates is going to be on campus, I think, August 25th. Better wrap this up. Jesse Adams says, Jesse from Mount Pleasant, is Mel Tucker and this staff making Dylan Tatum a priority, or are they set at running backs? It's a priority. And Finn answered that question for you. Justin Leonard says, do you foresee athletic staff cuts? And if so, at what point would those happen? And what point would those be announced? By the way, Justin, thanks for chiming in. Justin's got a son, a local pitcher, 15U, who's the real deal. Good player. We played against him, and it was a pleasure to play against him. An excellent pitcher with good control, which is good for our guys to get some good practice getting struck out against good pitchers. Anyway, Justin says, do you foresee athletic staff cuts? If so, at what point could those happen? There's got to be some cuts. When you shut off $100 million, there's got to be cuts. So staff members, I don't know, strength staff, these people that are doing a great job with graphics on the internet, they just came in with new jobs. Are they, tough decisions on who goes. People are going to have to go. Or I would imagine. I don't want to start rumors, it's not rumors. You're asking a good question. A lot of people are wondering it. You got to cut money somewhere, and salaries are always a place, unfortunately, where it happens. Justin Thin talking about Dylan Tatum at West Bloomfield says Tatum is a big priority for Will Piegler in 2022, along with a couple of Ohio running backs. Corey Robinson and I will get in touch with both soon. Brad Fashenko says Mize had trouble commanding his pitches tonight, talking about the Tigers. Carter 917 says, who could be our best recruit in 2022? Be realistic. I don't have a good answer for that right now. Mr. Bowman says, Michigan students moved on campus today. I didn't realize that. That's interesting. We'll see how that goes. That's really interesting. Michigan's president, Michigan State's president, somewhat similar backgrounds in terms of areas of expertise and infectious diseases and so forth. Two different treks on that one. Mr. Boneman watching AVS Dallas hockey. Good game. Okay, Avs and Dallas playing right now. I think Flyers are playing tonight. They probably already have. I probably already missed that one. Yeah, and then my man Detroit Spartan coming in big with the big sponsorship. Appreciate that. Really do. Appreciate that. He says, football or not, we are here for you, Comp. In my opinion, SpartanMag's never been better. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you saying that. Thank you. We're working on it. We got some good people around us. Getting into McDowell, Golston, Le'Veon Bell, Langford, Chris Trainham, tired and foggy. That's a good excuse. I was hoping more people would tell us what they're drinking, but they're not doing that. Aaron Mazers, regarding basketball, someone has got to transfer. They are really going to be loaded. Good point, especially in the front court. All right, that's about it. I think that's going to wrap it up. Appreciate all the questions. Appreciate the chat. Went too long again. I said I was going to go shorter because my voice sucks, but went longer. I don't know. Hope you guys don't mind. I'm glad you guys are here. We really appreciate the great sponsorships we got from Michigan State University, Detroit Spartan. Sorry, Detroit Spartan. I think I outed you just then. Sorry about that. I guess people already knew who you were. Chris Trainham, appreciate your help. And Brad Hoos, a lot of help from you too. Brad, go ahead and send me a direct message. We'll get some more information on your question. Appreciate that. Appreciate everybody that was here. And we'll be back, I guess, next Monday doing it again. It'll be Monday night in East Lansing. And we'll do it again. In the meantime, go check out SpartanMag.com if you're not already a subscriber. If you've stayed with us this long, you probably are. Appreciate all the support we get. And we'll talk to you soon. See you next time at Spartan Mag Live.